Jake Martinez had eaten a lot of questionable things in his 32 years of life. Raw blowfish in Tokyo, fermented shark in Iceland, and that gas station sushi in Nebraska that still haunts his nightmares. But standing outside the final feast on Zephyrian Prime, staring at a restaurant that literally advertised itself as where species come to die, he was starting to think maybe he'd finally found his match. Not that he'd ever admit it. "Are you absolutely certain about this, Mr. Jake?" squeaked Pip, his rabbit-eared alien guide, whose fluffy white fur had turned an alarming shade of gray since they'd arrived. "Perhaps we could visit the nice ice cream parlor instead. They have 37 flavors, and none of them cause immediate organ failure." Jake adjusted his camera setup, making sure the live stream was capturing his best angle. "Pip, buddy, I didn't travel 17 light years and spend my life savings to eat ice cream. My subscribers expect extreme content, and the final feast is the most extreme restaurant in the galaxy." The restaurant's exterior looked like someone had crossed a 5-star establishment with a medieval torture chamber. Elegant alien script spelled out the name above a door made from what appeared to be polished bone. Display cases flanked the entrance, containing photographs of various alien species with plaques reading "Last Meal," "Extinction Special," and "Time of Death, Immediately." "Look at all these testimonials," Jake said, gesturing at the photos. "This place has a perfect track record. Do you know how hard it is to maintain 5 stars when all your customers die?" A group of crystalline aliens hurried past them, giving Jake a wide berth while chittering nervously in their native language. Pip's ears drooped even further. "Mr. Jake, those beings were saying you smell like death. Not metaphorically. They have chemoreceptors that can detect the temporal displacement field that surrounds those about to meet their doom." "That's probably just my cologne," Jake replied, though he made a mental note to shower more often in space. "Come on, let's get this show started." The interior of the final feast was surprisingly elegant, if you ignored the medical equipment lining the walls and the hazmat suits hanging by the door. Soft lighting cast eerie shadows across tables filled with various alien diners, all of whom stopped mid-meal to stare at Jake with expressions ranging from curiosity to horror. A blob-like creature wearing a tiny bow tie oozed over to greet them. "Welcome to the final feast," it gurgled in perfect universal standard. "I am Glorp, your server. Might I suggest starting with our appetizer menu? The mild discomfort sampler only causes temporary blindness." "Actually," Jake said, pulling out his phone to start recording, "I'm here for the Extinction Special." The restaurant went dead silent. Even the ambient music seemed to stutter. Glorp's gelatinous form quivered. "Sir, I think there's been a misunderstanding. The Extinction Special isn't actually food. It's more of well, it's a weapon disguised as cuisine. We're required by 17 different galactic treaties to offer it, but nobody actually orders it. Well, nobody who expects to continue existing in this dimension." "Perfect," Jake grinned. "That's exactly what I want." Pip fainted. The sound of 6 heavy legs stomping across the kitchen floor announced the arrival of Chef Korthak before anyone saw him. When the insectoid alien emerged through the swinging doors, his 4 arms were crossed while his 2 auxiliary arms continued chopping vegetables with mechanical precision. His compound eyes, each the size of dinner plates, focused on Jake with the intensity of a targeting system. "Did someone actually request the Extinction Special?" Chef Korthak's voice sounded like gravel being processed through a garbage disposal. "Because if this is some kind of joke, I should mention that my species has no sense of humor. We had it surgically removed during our Industrial Revolution." Jake stood up, extending his hand for a shake that Chef Korthak ignored. "Chef Korthak, I presume? I'm Jake Martinez, food blogger extraordinaire. I've heard amazing things about your work. Well, not amazing for the people who ate it, obviously, but amazing from a culinary perspective." The chef's mandibles clicked in what might have been confusion. "Human. Do you understand what the Extinction Special actually is? It's not a meal, it's a gastronomic apocalypse. I created it using ingredients that exist in 17 different dimensions simultaneously. The last creature who tried it, a Galvanian rock-eater with a digestive system that could process molten plutonium, spontaneously transformed into energy, and dispersed across 3 star systems." "Sounds spicy," Jake replied, settling back into his chair. "I'll take mine with a side of fries." By now, a crowd had gathered. Other diners abandoned their tables to get a better view, while restaurant staff peeked out from the kitchen. Someone had apparently called the local news because Jake spotted camera crews setting up outside the windows. Glorp slithered over with what appeared to be a tablet computer. "Sir, before we proceed, galactic law requires that you sign these waivers. This one releases the restaurant from liability if you die. This one prevents your species from declaring war on us if you die. And this one gives us permission to use your remains for science if you die." "A lot of death-related paperwork," Jake observed, scribbling his signature without reading. "You guys seem pretty confident about the outcome." Chef Korthak's eyes began glowing an ominous red. "Confident? Human? I have spent 300 years perfecting the art of culinary termination. My dishes have ended bloodlines, concluded evolutionary chains, and once accidentally caused a small moon to cease existing. The extinction special contains elements that shouldn't exist in this universe, spices that exist only in the moments between heartbeats, and a garnish made from crystallized regret." "Does it come with bread?" Jake asked. The chef's compound eyes somehow managed to convey the emotion of someone questioning their life choices. "You're serious about this, aren't you?" "Dead serious," Jake grinned. "No pun intended." A thin, gray alien with tentacles for arms approached their table nervously. "Excuse me, human, but I'm Dr. Vexithan from the Galactic Health Organization. We've been monitoring the situation, and I feel obligated to inform you that the extinction special has a 100% fatality rate across 47 different species. Not 99%, 100. As in everyone who has ever consumed it has immediately stopped existing." Jake pulled up his food blog on his phone, showing off his subscriber count. "Doc, I've got 3 million followers who tune in specifically to watch me eat things that should kill me. Last month I reviewed a plutonian fire fruit that burns at 6,000 degrees. The month before that, I tried Andromedan ghost peppers that exist only in parallel dimensions. I think I can handle whatever Chef Korthak here has cooked up." Dr. Vexithan's tentacles writhed in distress. "But this is different. This isn't just spicy food. It's a fundamental violation of the laws of physics prepared with culinary precision." "Even better," Jake said, adjusting his camera angle. "Hey everyone, Jake here, coming to you live from the final feast on Zephyrian Prime, where I'm about to become the first being in galactic history to survive the legendary extinction special." Chef Korthak looked around at the growing crowd of spectators, news crews, and what appeared to be a betting pool being organized by some shady-looking aliens in the corner. His professional pride was clearly warring with his bewilderment at the situation. "Fine," he said finally. "If the human wants to die in the most spectacular fashion possible, who am I to deny him? But I want it on record that I warned him, multiple times, in several languages." As Korthak stomped back toward the kitchen, Jake couldn't help but notice that several other diners were quietly settling their bills and heading for the exits. Even Glorp seemed to be inching toward the door. "Mr. Jake," whispered Pip, who had regained consciousness and was now clinging to Jake's leg like a furry life preserver. "It's not too late to change your mind. We could go to that ice cream place. They have a flavor that tastes like childhood memories." Jake patted Pip's head reassuringly. "Relax, buddy. What's the worst that could happen?" The kitchen of the final feast had been cleared of all non-essential personnel, which apparently meant everyone except Chef Korthak and one brave sous chef who was either extremely loyal or had lost a significant bet. Jake could see through the service window as the chef began assembling ingredients that seemed to bend reality around them. "Ladies, gentlemen, and assorted non-binary life forms," Jake announced to his growing audience both in person and online, "we're now witnessing something that's never been documented before. The preparation of a dish so dangerous that most civilizations have made it illegal to even think about the recipe." Chef Korthak emerged from what appeared to be a temporal storage unit, carrying a container that hurt to look at directly. "Quantum peppers from the Heisenberg Nebula," he announced grimly. "They exist in a state of perpetual uncertainty until observed, at which point they simultaneously explode and implode while setting your molecular structure on fire." "Fascinating," Jake said, zooming in with his camera. How do you harvest something that doesn't technically exist? Very carefully and with excellent life insurance, the chef replied, using specialized tongs that seemed to be made from crystallized time itself. Next, we add temporal spices from the Chronos system. These seasonings exist in 17 different time streams simultaneously, which means when you taste them, you're actually experiencing every meal you've ever had and will ever have at the same moment. The sous chef, a nervous-looking creature that resembled a cross between a lobster and an anxiety attack, handed over a vial of swirling, multicolored liquid. The essence of dying suns, chef, collected from the final moments of stellar collapse. Ah, yes, Chef Korthak nodded approvingly. This provides the base flavor profile of cosmic despair with hints of gravitational collapse. Jake's chat was exploding with comments. Guys, if you're just tuning in, I'm about to eat a dish that contains the literal essence of dead stars. This is either going to be the best content I've ever created or my very last video. Dr. Vexithen approached again, this time carrying what appeared to be a medical scanner. Human, I've been taking readings of your biological functions, and I have to say, your species displays some very unusual characteristics. Your brain chemistry suggests you're either incredibly brave or suffering from a complete disconnect with reality. Little bit of both, Doc, Jake admitted. That's kind of my brand. Meanwhile, Pip had retreated to what he considered a safe distance, which was apparently 3 tables away, and behind a potted plant that might have been carnivorous. Mr. Jake, the betting pool has reached astronomical proportions. There are beings wagering entire star systems on whether you'll survive the first bite. What are the odds? 17,000 to 1 against survival, and those are the optimistic calculations. Chef Korthak continued his preparation, adding ingredients that defied description. There was something that looked like crystallized screaming, a powder made from the dreams of extinct civilizations, and what appeared to be a small black hole contained in a spice shaker. The final ingredient, the chef announced with the solemnity of a funeral director, is perhaps the most dangerous of all. The concentrated essence of hubris, extracted from the final thoughts of beings who believed they could accomplish the impossible. How ironic, Jake muttered, though he had to admit his confidence was starting to waver slightly. The dish that was taking shape before him didn't look like food, so much as a violation of several fundamental laws of physics served on a plate. Emergency vehicles had begun arriving outside the restaurant. Jake could see hazmat teams, interdimensional cleanup crews, and what appeared to be a priest from every major galactic religion gathering on the sidewalk. Is all this really necessary? Jake asked, gesturing toward the window. Chef Korthak's compound eyes regarded him with something that might have been pity. Human, the last time someone attempted the extinction special, the resulting energy release created a temporary wormhole that connected this dimension to a reality where mathematics don't work properly. It took 6 months to convince the numbers to come back. The dish was nearly complete now, and Jake had to admit it was beautiful in a terrifying, reality-warping sort of way. It seemed to exist in more dimensions than the standard 3, occasionally flickering in and out of visible spectrum, while emitting a sound like distant screaming mixed with elevator music. Final warning, human, Chef Korthak said, approaching with the completed extinction special, held at arm's length with all 6 appendages. This dish has ended evolutionary lines that survived for millions of years. It has concluded the existence of beings that existed outside the normal flow of time. Are you absolutely certain you want to proceed? Jake looked at the dish, then at his camera, then at the crowd of beings who had gathered to watch him die in what would undoubtedly be a spectacular fashion. His subscriber count was climbing rapidly as news of the event spread across the galaxy. Chef, he said, straightening his shoulders with the kind of confidence that could only come from terminal stupidity or complete faith in human resilience. I've been certain about a lot of things in my life, and I've been wrong about most of them. But I've never been more certain about anything than I am right now. Let's do this thing. The moment arrived with all the ceremony of a public execution, which, according to the gathered crowd, was essentially what they were witnessing. Chef Korthak placed the extinction special on the table with the reverence typically reserved for handling unstable explosive devices or angry deities. The dish itself was a masterpiece of terrifying culinary art. It appeared to be a simple plate of what might generously be called food, if food could exist in 17 dimensions while occasionally burping small wisps of what looked like the concept of purple. The aroma was indescribable, mainly because most languages lacked words for the smell of time ending or ode to cosmic horror. "All right, everyone, this is it," Jake announced to his camera, his voice steady, despite the fact that every instinct he possessed was screaming at him to run. "I'm about to become either the first being to survive the extinction special or the most documented death in galactic history. Either way, it's going to be great for my subscriber numbers." The restaurant had fallen so silent that Jake could hear his own heartbeat echoing off the walls. Even the ambient background noise of the kitchen had stopped, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Chef Korthak stepped back several feet. "For what it's worth, human, it has been an honor to prepare what will likely be your final meal. I shall name a crater after you." "Thanks, chef. That's surprisingly touching." Jake picked up his fork, which immediately began vibrating as it approached the dish. The metal seemed to be having an existential crisis about its purpose in life. He speared a piece of what might have been the quantum pepper, though it was hard to tell since it kept shifting between being a pepper, a small supernova, and what appeared to be his third-grade teacher's disapproving expression. "Here goes nothing," he said, and took his first bite. For a moment, absolutely nothing happened. Jake chewed thoughtfully, his face displaying the concentrated expression of someone trying to identify complex flavor profiles, rather than someone consuming a dish that had reportedly ended 47 different species. "Interesting," he said finally, swallowing. "There's definitely some heat there, but it's more of a existential heat? Like my taste buds are questioning their place in the universe." The crowd continued to stare in stunned silence. Several beings had their recording devices trained on Jake, apparently waiting for him to spontaneously combust or transcend to a higher plane of existence. "The dying star essence adds a nice umami flavor," Jake continued, taking another bite. "And there's definitely some complexity from the temporal spices. I'm getting notes of my childhood, my potential futures, and what tastes like next Thursday." Dr. Vexithan's scanner was beeping frantically. "Impossible," the doctor muttered. "His cellular structure should be in complete collapse by now. Instead, his readings are, well, they're weird, but he's definitely not dead." Jake took a third bite, then a fourth. "Chef Korthak, I have to say this is genuinely unique. The crystallized regret adds a bitter note that really complements the hubris essence. It's like tasting the emotional journey of every failed ambition in galactic history." That's when things started to get weird. Jake began to glow. Not the gentle, warm glow of contentment, but the ominous, reality-bending glow of something that was definitely not supposed to be happening. The light emanating from his skin shifted through colors that didn't exist in normal space-time, while his hair started defying gravity in ways that made physicists weep. "Oh," Jake said, looking down at his illuminated hands with mild interest. "That's new." The glow intensified, and Jake slowly began to rise from his chair. Not standing up, but actually floating, as if gravity had decided he was no longer subject to its authority. Wisps of energy began crackling around his body like the universe's most dangerous light show. "This is it!" Dr. Vexithan shouted over the growing humming sound that Jake was apparently emitting. "He's entering the terminal phase! Everyone take cover!" Panic erupted throughout the restaurant as beings dove behind tables, rushed for exits, or in the case of one particularly dramatic crystalline entity, began composing what appeared to be a death poem. Pip had retreated so far behind his potted plant that only his ears were visible, and they were flat against his skull in terror. Jake, meanwhile, was now floating about 3 feet off the ground, glowing like a small sun, and experiencing what appeared to be visions of interdimensional significance. His eyes had gone completely white, and when he spoke, his voice echoed with harmonics that sounded like they were coming from multiple realities at once. "I can see everything," he announced in his new, slightly terrifying voice. "The birth of stars, the death of civilizations, the exact moment when the universe realized it had made a terrible mistake with quantum physics." Chef Korthak watched with professional fascination mixed with growing concern. "This is unusual," he admitted to Glorp, who was hiding behind the dessert cart. "Typically, beings just explode or cease to exist. I've never seen anyone achieve temporary godhood from my cooking." The energy field around Jake pulsed brighter, and for a moment, it looked like he might actually discorporate into pure energy and drift away to join the cosmic background radiation. Several beings in the crowd started placing last-minute bets on whether he would explode, implode, or simply vanish. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, the light show stopped. Jake dropped back into his chair with a soft thud, his hair settling back to normal, his eyes returning to their usual brown, and the only sign that anything unusual had happened was a faint afterglow around his ears. The restaurant remained frozen in stunned silence for approximately 30 seconds. "Well," Jake said finally, picking up his fork again, "that was definitely a unique flavor experience. I'm getting some serious interdimensional aftertaste, and I think I briefly understood the meaning of life. But it's already fading." He looked around at the crowd of beings staring at him in shock, disbelief, and what appeared to be existential confusion. "So," he continued cheerfully, "what's for dessert?" The silence that followed Jake's casual dessert inquiry lasted long enough for several geological ages to pass on nearby planets. Chef Korthak's compound eyes had somehow managed to convey the expression of someone whose worldview was currently being fed through a blender. "What?" the chef said slowly, his voice cracking like ancient pottery. "Did you just ask?" Jake wiped his mouth with his napkin, leaving behind a faint energy residue that made the fabric glow softly. "I asked about dessert. You know, something sweet to finish off the meal, maybe something with chocolate. I realize that might be hard to find this far from Earth, but I'm flexible." Dr. Vexithan stumbled forward, his scanner still beeping frantically. "This is impossible. Utterly, completely impossible. You just consumed a dish that operates on principles that violate 17 different laws of physics, experienced what appeared to be temporary ascension to a higher dimensional state, and you're asking about dessert?" "Well, yeah," Jake shrugged. "The extinction special was great, don't get me wrong, but it was more of an appetizer portion. I'm still kind of hungry." Pip emerged from behind his plant, his fur now completely white with shock. "Mr. Jake, you were glowing, actually glowing, and floating, and I'm pretty sure you briefly existed in several dimensions simultaneously while speaking in languages that have not been invented yet." "Yeah, that was wild," Jake agreed. "I felt like I could see the entire universe for a minute there. Did you know that somewhere out there's a planet where the dominant species evolved from sentient furniture? Anyway, Chef Korthak, any chance I could get another serving of that extinction special? You know, to really get a sense of the flavor profile?" Chef Korthak's 6 arms all stopped moving simultaneously, which for his species was roughly equivalent to a human jaw dropping to the floor. Another serving? If it's not too much trouble. And maybe with a little more of that temporal spice? I'm still not sure I caught all the flavor notes from my potential futures." The betting pool in the corner had devolved into chaos. Aliens were arguing in 17 different languages about whether Jake's survival constituted a win, a loss, or a fundamental breakdown of the mathematics that governed probability. Several bookmakers appeared to be having nervous breakdowns. News crews were rushing to set up additional equipment outside. Jake could see reporters from across the galaxy gathering on the sidewalk, while what appeared to be scientists from the Universal Academy of Impossible Things were setting up monitoring equipment. "Human," Chef Korthak said, his voice taking on the tone of someone whose life's work had just been called into question. "Do you understand what you're asking? The extinction special isn't just food. It's a carefully crafted agent of absolute termination. I have spent centuries perfecting the exact combination of impossible ingredients required to ensure immediate and total cessation of existence." "Right, and it's really good," Jake replied encouragingly. "I mean, sure, there were some side effects, but I've had worse reactions to street tacos in Mexico. Remember that time in Tijuana, Pip?" Pip shook his head frantically. "Mr. Jake, this is nothing like Tijuana. In Tijuana, the worst thing that happened was food poisoning. Here you temporarily became one with the cosmic background radiation." Jake was already pulling up his phone to check the comments on his live stream. Oh wow, guys, the chat is going crazy. Someone's asking if I can get the recipe. Chef, any chance you'd be willing to share your secret? Chef Korthak's mandibles began clicking in what could have been laughter, hysteria, or the alien equivalent of a nervous breakdown. Share the recipe. Human, this recipe was developed using ingredients that exist outside the normal flow of causality. The instruction manual alone has to be stored in a pocket dimension because it causes temporary insanity in anyone who reads it. I've got a pretty strong stomach for that kind of thing, Jake offered helpfully. I once read a Vogon poetry collection without going completely mad. That's actually impressive, admitted Dr. Vexithan.
Vogon poetry has been classified as a cognitive hazard by the Galactic Health Organization. By now, other patrons had begun to cautiously return to their tables, though they maintained a safe distance from Jake's table. Several were taking pictures while others appeared to be live streaming the event to their own followers. Glorp oozed over nervously.
Mr. Martinez, I feel obligated to mention that the kitchen staff has submitted a formal request to the restaurant management asking that you be classified as a potential existential threat to local reality. Nothing personal, you understand, but your presence here is causing some unusual effects. Jake looked around and noticed that his table seemed to be existing in slightly sharper focus than the rest of the restaurant, as if reality was paying special attention to his immediate vicinity. His water glass was also floating about an inch above the table, though he hadn't noticed until Glorp pointed it out. Huh, Jake said, gently pushing the glass back down to the table, where it stayed for approximately 3 seconds before floating up again. That's probably temporary, right? Chef Korthak had been staring at Jake with the intensity of someone trying to solve a puzzle that violated several fundamental principles of logic. You want another serving, he said finally. You actually want to consume more of a dish that should have reduced you to your component atoms. I mean, if it's not too much trouble. And hey, since I survived the first one, maybe you could kick it up a notch. Add some extra quantum peppers or maybe throw in some of those crystallized screams I heard you mention. The chef's eyes began glowing again, but this time it seemed to be more from professional curiosity than impending doom. You realize that if I make it stronger, there's no guarantee that whatever impossible biological quirk allowed you to survive the first serving will work twice? Jake grinned and adjusted his camera to make sure it was capturing the conversation. Chef, I didn't travel across the galaxy to play it safe. Besides, my subscribers are expecting a show, and right now my viewer count is hitting records that are probably violating some kind of intergalactic broadcasting regulations. Chef Korthak looked around at the crowd, the cameras, the betting pools, and the growing circus atmosphere that had transformed his normally dignified restaurant of doom into something resembling a cosmic sideshow. Fine, he said, all 6 arms crossing simultaneously. But if you explode this time, I'm not cleaning up the mess. 3 months later, Jake Martinez was sitting in his newly expanded apartment on Zephyrian Prime, editing his latest video while fielding interview requests from every major media outlet in 17 different galaxies. His subscriber count had broken several mathematical concepts and was now being measured in units that required new branches of mathematics to comprehend. So there I was, Jake said to the camera, floating 3 feet off the ground, glowing like a discount star, having visions of the cosmic truth, and all I could think was, this needs more seasoning. The second plate of Extinction Special had gone considerably better than the first, mainly because Jake had developed what Dr. Vexithan reluctantly classified as adaptive impossibility resistance. Instead of the dramatic light show, Jake had simply experienced a mild case of temporary telepathy and the ability to taste colors for about an hour. Chef Korthak had taken Jake's survival as both a personal challenge and a professional opportunity. The final feast was now booked solid for the next 2 years, with beings traveling from across the galaxy for the chance to witness someone actually survive the legendary dish. The chef had grudgingly agreed to a business partnership, developing a line of survivable impossibility cuisine for the growing human tourist market. The thing about humans, Jake explained to his latest interviewer, a 7-tentacled entity from the Galactic Broadcasting Network, is that we're too stupid to know when something should kill us. Other species evolved sophisticated survival instincts and rational fear responses, We evolved stubbornness and the ability to convince ourselves that we're invincible right up until we are not. Pip, who had parlayed his association with Jake into a thriving business as a guide for extreme culinary tourism, was handling Jake's scheduling from the office they'd set up in the spare bedroom. Mr. Jake has 3 interview requests from major scientific journals, 2 offers from publishers who want him to write a cookbook, and something from a group called the Department of Interdimensional Anomalies, who want to classify him as a sentient abstract concept. Tell the department I'm flattered, but I prefer to remain corporeal for tax purposes, Jake called back. The success had led to increasingly ridiculous challenges. Jake had recently survived the meal that ended time at a restaurant on Proxima Centauri, experienced lunch at the end of reality on a space station orbiting a black hole, and was currently planning a visit to an establishment that served breakfast from the perspective of an extinct universe. Dr. Vexithan had become something of a regular fixture at these events, documenting what he termed the ongoing human violation of natural law through aggressive ignorance. His research paper titled The Martinez Effect, a study in species-level reality denial, had become required reading at xenobiology programs across the galaxy. The fascinating thing, the doctor explained to anyone who would listen, is that Mr. Martinez doesn't possess any special biological adaptations. His survival seems to be based entirely on a fundamental refusal to accept that he should be dead. It's as if his species has weaponized the concept of fake it till you make it. Chef Korthak had initially resented Jake's survival of his masterpiece, but had gradually come to appreciate the artistry involved in creating food so dangerous that surviving it required a complete disconnect from reality. Their collaboration had produced dishes with names like The Lunch That Ended Wednesdays and Brunch from the Negative Zone. Working with Jake has taught me that there's more to culinary excellence than simply ending the existence of your customers, the chef admitted during a recent interview, though I maintain that a 99% fatality rate is still quite respectable for haute cuisine. The restaurant had been forced to install additional safety equipment, expand their insurance coverage to include acts of impossible human survival, and hire a full-time physicist to monitor the local space-time continuum for anomalies. The wall of victim species photos had been supplemented with a single image of Jake labeled Extinction Special Survivor. Results may vary. Jake's food blog, now titled Nearly Dead Delicious: A Human's Guide to Surviving Impossible Cuisine, had become the go-to resource for other humans attempting similar culinary suicide missions across the galaxy. His recent review of a dish called The Sandwich of Infinite Regret had crashed 17 different servers due to the traffic volume. The secret, Jake explained to his viewers during his weekly livestream, is to approach every meal with the confidence of someone who has never met a food that could kill them, combined with the stupidity of someone who wouldn't believe it if they did. It's a delicate balance. As Jake wrapped up his latest video, his phone buzzed with a message from Pip. A new restaurant had opened on the far side of the galaxy, claiming to serve the final meal, a dining experience that ends not just species, but the concept of existence itself. Jake grinned and started planning his next trip. After all, his subscribers were counting on him, and he'd never met a challenge too dangerous to eat. "This is Jake Martinez signing off from Zephyrian Prime," he announced to his camera. "Remember, life's too short to eat boring food, and apparently some foods are too interesting for life to be short. Until next time, keep eating dangerously." Outside his window, he could see the line of beings still waiting for tables at the final feast, while Chef Korthak's latest creation, the appetizer of absolute finality, continued its perfect record of immediately ending anyone brave enough to order it. Anyone except humans, apparently. 3 more had attempted it just last week, and while 2 had experienced temporary existence as abstract mathematical concepts, all 3 had ultimately survived to leave positive reviews online. Jake was already planning his next impossible meal, secure in the knowledge that somewhere in the universe, there was always a dish dangerous enough to be interesting and a human stupid enough to survive it. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Never underestimate a species that conquered its own planet, primarily through the power of positive thinking and aggressive denial of obvious danger. As for Jake, he was already researching restaurants that served food in dimensions that didn't technically exist yet. After all, he had a reputation to maintain.